Growing up in the Deep South, I often heard that Reconstruction destroyed the spirit of the South, an argument used to explain the need for a return to either a neo-Confederate government or to justify the using of the symbolism of the Confederacy. By the 1870s, many of the same Confederate politicians had been re-elected under the Union flag after taking an oath of loyalty, and many of the upper cabinet of the Confederacy didn't even see the need to establish an exile government when they already had their own government in the Deep South. Let's examine an incident of the Reconstruction era that some still memorialize, which was commemorated until very recently in the town of Augusta. Many areas in this part of the country were majority African American because the need for slave labor was so prevalent here, and many still had experience from famous all-black regiments of the Civil War, such as the 54th Massachusetts. Hamburg was one of these towns, a small community just across the border and over the Savannah River in South Carolina. The election that was coming up was supposed to be the last one of the Reconstruction era, and white Georgia neo-Confederates knew that they had to suppress voting in South Carolina if they wanted to keep what was essentially a Confederate shadow government composed chiefly of Confederate veterans. To this end, Benjamin Tillman established the Red Shirts. Their allies were the Democratic Party, the Ku Klux Klan, and the White League. They wanted to intimidate Africans in any way they could, which is what happened in July of 1876, culminating in a massacre so violent it suppressed African voters for nearly a century after. Benjamin Tillman, who at this point wasn't an elected official, claimed to white crowds in Augusta that black men were blocking the roads and denying any white man passage. Hamburg was, in reality, the headquarters of the local National Guard post composed almost entirely of freed slaves. Later sources also say that a cart of white men intentionally drove into a column of marching black soldiers to cause a civil disturbance. The whites took this to court, and on July 8th, over 100 of them showed up with guns, pitchforks, and torches. Matthew Butler, whom the court had to refer to as General Butler because of his service in the Confederacy, claimed that peace could only come if they disbanded the armory and surrendered all their weapons to him personally. He had no legal right to disband a National Guard post, and at this point in time was just a civilian. The black National Guard men saw the signs of a lynch mob forming and retreated to a bridge overlooking the river, which was part of the armory. Modern sources claim about 25 black men and possibly 15 others were in the building when the white mob began shooting through the windows. In the exchange of gunfire, a local white vigilante, or an onlooker named McKee Merriweather, was killed. In Augusta, there is still a monument honoring him as a martyr to the white race. There have been calls in recent years to tear it down, but the opposition is saying the same thing about heritage, not hate. But this heritage is clearly predicated on a lie that his death was one of honor, and it was not. The black soldiers waited until darkness to escape. Meanwhile, the Confederate officers combed the streets and assassinated the town marshal, a man by the name of James Cook, on the street. The white mob then marched through the streets, holding any black men they found at gunpoint and sitting them in a circle near the bridge. The white militia debated on the fates of the black men. Most of them were not involved with the National Guard in any way, and decided on executing 4 of them in front of each other before beating the rest. The white mob also collected several important leaders of the community, including black state legislator Simon Coker of Barnwell. Ben Tillman's personal company was chosen to execute him. Before being executed, Simon Coker asked Tillman's unit to instruct his wife to gin cotton, pay that month's rent, and to have a final prayer. They executed him when he was in the middle of his prayer. Nobody was ever prosecuted for this. Tillman went on to serve in South Carolina politics for decades, and there's still memorials to him all over the state. There were never any levees constructed on the black side of the Savannah River, so when Augusta was protected in the 1911 and 1927 floods, Hamburg was not. Most black residents left by 1929, and today there are no visible traces. In fact, it's mostly underneath a golf course.
What did you learn in school today, dear little boy of mine? What did you learn in school today, dear little boy of mine? I learned that Washington never told a lie. I learned that soldiers seldom die. I learned that everybody's free. That's what the teacher said to me, and that's what I learned in school today. That's what I learned in school.